for truth.
Welcome to Duality Check, the podcast where two brothers embark on a journey through the realms of scientific inquiry, the mysteries of the past, and the uncharted frontiers of spirituality. Join us as we explore the wonders of our world and beyond, all while embracing the roles of curious bystanders rather than experts. Together we'll unravel the tapestry of existence, blending the dichotomies of knowledge and wonder. Get ready to question, ponder, and delve into the dualities that shape our understanding of reality on Duality Check. I'm Drew.
And I'm Dean, and this is episode number 37.
Since we heard your beer crack there, maybe we start with a beer review. We have a long-awaited beer review. Nobody's commented on it, but we're going to say the long-awaited.
You heard beer crack, but now I have to leave it in. Yep. I would normally edit out the part before you start talking.
No. Keeping it in this time.
Well, we can't review it if you haven't tasted it yet. Here, have a sip.
Right. Let me see.
Have a swig. This is called Gummies Tropical IPA by Sweetwater Brewing Company. Our dad would be proud of us because it's 9.5% alcohol by volume. And to me, it really kind of tastes like almost like a fruit punch beer. It's that juicy, fruity tasting.
Yeah, it's a hazy, so it's a really light hazy where it's like you don't taste much of the I don't know, the citrusy. Well, you do taste the citrusy, but I don't know. It's got a lot of sour to it too.
Yeah, I think
it's got a lot of sour blend in there. What's the description on it? Does it have any?
It does not.
Fail. No.
It says from the brewers of 420 Atlanta, Georgia, USA.
They got you.
I was just in
I was just gonna say. Somehow your Atlantean programming came with you, and you went straight for the Atlanta beer.
It looks like a freaking Hawaii beer. It's got like palm trees and sunglasses and sharks and cocktails on the pineapples on the can.
So I had picked up before. You all know I love the Sierra Nevada hazies, so I picked up a newer one I've never seen before. It's called Cosmic Little Thing IPA. It's a hazy double IPA. An interstellar wave of tropical flavor. Here, take a sip.
Let me try that.
It's 8.5 APV. ABV. I don't know what.
Yeah. That one's not as overwhelmingly fruity as this one.
Or sour. But right. I like... There's the hazy makes, or the Sierra Nevada makes a sour haze, and it tastes a lot like that.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And the sours, it's got like a weird throat hit, right?
Yeah. No, the first
good.
Swig I took of this, like, kind of like punched me in the face. I was like, oh my god, what is this?
Yeah, you like question whether you should have swallowed that for a second, and then you're like, it's okay.
But I'm not the biggest hazy fan. Like, I enjoy them, but like I'm not a diehard for them.
Okay, well, I'll tell you then. I'm just kidding.
But I will tell you this week, or I guess I already told Drew, but I got I gotta have a Pliny the Elder. I got to stop by one of our customers who's like a little tap room, and they had bottles of Pliny the Elder in their fridges there. And oh my God, I love that beer.
Did they give you one to go?
I mean, I bought one to go, but yeah, I drank one there, and then I bought one to go, and Dad and I had it at work.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
That was pretty
I need
good.
to join the family business, man. To have beers with you guys after work.
Let the nepotism rule.
Hey, if it works, right? If it works. Sometimes it doesn't work. You're just hiring people based on the fact that they're your family. At least I've got some maintenance experience. I know how to use tools. I can climb a ladder. I can crawl through spaces.
You would be a good hire.
You know, I can contribute.
Yeah. Yeah, they can't really. I started at the bottom of the totem pole and I worked my way up. I was already a computer nerd, but I started just running cables through attics back in the day.
Yeah, you were
it's going to be 20 years that I've been there next year. It makes me feel so old.
Don't do that to me either.
Oh, man.
Dang. All right. Well,
All right. So what are we talking about today, Drew?
today we referenced it in the last episode, but we're gonna cover some crop circles, and some cool stories surrounding the crop circle phenomena, and some funny stuff as well. So we've got a couple of video clips that we're gonna play, and I'll get as many of these into the video version of the podcast as well in editing. But
looks like our main source is the Y-Files episode called Aliens and Espionage, Crop Circles and the CIA Cover-Up. They don't want you to know. Yep. And we'll give a link to it. So if you want to, we'll be playing little clips out of context here, but definitely support Y-Files and check out the whole episode if you haven't seen this one already.
Yeah, we're going to be skipping around this video a little bit, and we're not playing the whole thing because I respect them and I want them to get all the views. And I think all of you would be better off watching these videos.
Yeah.
But we're going to, as you're listening to us and what we have to say about them, we will be covering a few clips. I
just hope we get some good hecklefish clips in this too.
You know, it's funny. I like hecklefish, but I don't know. Maybe we'll catch a little glimpse of them for sure.
All right.
But usually my editing was kept him out just because that's his property. You know, that's his intellectual. Obviously, all of the story and the way he's done it is, but it's just his voice. Like, you know, for the most part. Anyway,
what's the behind the scenes on hecklefish anyway? I don't know anything.
Dude, you know what's funny is he's smart.
Is it?
He encodes it in all of the ads. All of the story of hecklefish from start to finish, if you go back, is part of his ads.
I don't mean like his character story, but is it him that voices hecklefish, or is it another one of their team members?
It's either him or his brother. Okay. Him and his brother are like two of the main people, but he also has a lot of contributors. But I assume it's mostly him because usually what he says,
because they've been doing hecklefish since before they were big.
Yeah, he's been doing hecklefish since the beginning, really.
Yeah.
And it was always kind of I believe he addressed it at one point because he's been doing these like live streams after a premiere.
Right.
And if you watch some of them, he talks a lot about that. And he's like, you know, he gives a little bit more background on it. And I think he said at one point it was him. I can't remember if he said it was him or his brother, but he was talking about like the whole process of like, so we just have to find that clip because I'm not going to tell you for definite.
I just like the whole effect that they do with it, with like
it's like the
stitching a human mouth on top of a on top of a like little fish animation. I just think it's great. It reminds me of the old school Hollywood effects, like the trip to the moon and stuff, where it would make the moon like blink and have a face, but it was just like a human face superimposed over artwork of the moon. Yeah. It looks super like low budget, but like creepy.
Which is actually where a lot of his background, like he was a producer in Hollywood and like did a bunch of stuff for Hollywood and early days of his career. And then, but he has an affinity or a appreciation for a lot of those old Hollywood techniques and like styles, and you know, he's nostalgic for some of that. So I'm sure that's where that comes from.
Well, cool. Should we get into the first one, or do you want to set the scene here a little bit?
We'll set the scene a little bit. So we had talked a little about in one of our previous podcasts some of the stuff that I had seen from this episode and some of the videos that we've seen. So to start it off, I wanted to talk about one specific aspect of it.
Crop circles?
Of crop circles, an event that happened within crop circles. And then we'll talk about a lot of the stuff that we had talked about before, at least that I had referred to. So in the late 1970s, Carl Sagan was part of a group that sent a message to space in binary code.
Right.
And this was
on the golden disc on Viking.
Yep. So it was. Well, no, they did do that, but he also was part of sending a
radio signal.
Yeah. So he used the most powerful radio telescope at the time, and it was in Arecibo, So
Right.
it's referred to as the Arecibo Message.
Right.
And it was sent in binary form. And it was an image that depicted, I wish I would have had just the image to show you while we're doing this.
I can just Google Arecibo Message real quick.
So the message we sent.
That's the one with like the picture. No, I'm thinking of the Viking, I think.
Right there. Yep.
Yep. This one. I've seen this.
So it's a binary code, and it represents all of the different information that is encoded, like human information and like our planet, our biological makeup. So it's like shows that carbon is the main, element, and then it shows like a little depiction of a human roughly, and like it says in binary our height and weight, just averages for human beings. And then it shows in the pink at the bottom there, it shows a depiction of the telescope the message was sent with. And then right above that in the yellow is our solar system. So it shows that we are. So it shows the sun on the far right. This image might be flopped.
No,
anyway,
yeah, maybe. But the
it
sun,
shows that
and
we
then
are
the third planet from the sun is elevated to show that we're there.
We're the ones occupying it. And at the top, I think it shows our population.
And it's showing the number of pixels for the planet based on their mass, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
that's Earth,
I think so.
Mars, and then Jupiter and Saturn are big.
Yeah, I think so. And then...
What are these up here, the green?
Those are the elements. Those are the elements found in our atmosphere and in our planet that are like the main ones. And then it shows like we are like and it shows in the middle and then with the blue lines.
Yeah,
that's the DNA sequence. So it shows that we are carbon-based life forms. And at the bottom, I can't remember what the bottom was telling. I think it was just other like date and time or something like that.
Okay.
Of the message, something like that.
I'm assuming you're setting this up because there seems to have possibly been a crop circle response to this.
Yes. So the Arecibo Message was sent to a cluster of stars in the constellation of Hercules. Okay. The nearest star in that cluster was 25,000 light years away. So you wouldn't have expected a message anytime soon.
Right.
You know. And then, but just 25 years later, there was a response, and it was in the form of a crop circle.
It was 25 light years away.
It was 25,000 light years away.
25,000.
Is the closest star in the cluster of
that it was in the direction that it was sent.
So 25,000 light years was the closest star to have received
But 25 years later, we get a response.
And it's found in Chilbolton, which is in England. So it was Arecibo, I believe, is somewhere in Europe, and then Chilbolton, I believe, is also in Europe. The Chilbolton radio telescope, and that was it was sometime in the late 1970s when they sent the message, but it was responded to on August 14th, 2001. And it was found right next to a different telescope, radio telescope. So let's go to 10:05:11. So yeah, let's go to 10:05.
Okay.
Let's play this.
For stars in the Hercules constellation. It's called the Arecibo Message because that was the name of the giant radio telescope used to transmit it. The team that created the message was led by Dr. Frank Drake with assistance from Carl Sagan. The message was 1,679 binary digits that could be converted to an image, designed to convey information about civilization on Earth. It starts with a representation of the numbers 1 through 10. This provides a key to the rest of the message. Next, atomic numbers of hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus, which are used to make up DNA. Carbon is at the top because it's the most dominant in forms of life. The message shows more information about DNA, including the double helix structure. Toward the bottom, a figure of a human, its average height, and the population of the Earth, which was a little over 4 billion at the time. Next, our solar system, starting with the sun and moving out to Pluto. The Earth is shifted up to identify the planet sending the signal. At the bottom, a graphic representing the Arecibo radio telescope. Now, the nearest star that could possibly receive the message is 25,000 light years away, so we couldn't really expect a reply for another 50,000 years. But on the morning of August 14th, 2001, a formation was discovered right next to the Chilbolton radio telescope. Now, even if you don't know the full design, when you're on the ground, you can tell you're in a crop circle. There's structure and uniformity
skip
to
forward
it.
now to
But
1147. Just skip forward a little bit on that.
Oh, so this is that crop circle?
Yep.
Wow. It looks formatted very similar, but different.
So if you, it's upside down. It looks like.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
no,
This is the top here.
that's the top there. Yeah.
So looks like the elements. Looks like they also have DNA.
But theirs has a third strand.
They have multiple planets raised.
Yep. And one that looks like a cluster of planets or some sort
Right.
of structure.
And then this demonstration of the telescope.
That's whatever they use to send the message.
They have some sort of telescope cluster, probably.
So if you skip forward just a little bit, it shows you a different crop circle found not too far away.
Well, should I play this or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's play this.
All right.
this became known as the Arecibo Answer.
Ay, Chihuahua.
The formation uses the same 23 by 73 grid. The top line shows the numbers 1 through 10, just like the original, but the reply shows silicon as the main element for life, not carbon. Their DNA is shown as having a third string. In the center is a humanoid figure about 4 feet tall with a large head.
Looks like
and
a
their
gray.
population is about 21 billion. Below the figure is their solar system. They appear to occupy 3 objects in the system, the 3rd and 4th planets, and then there's another shape that could mean a planet or some other object or structure. On the human Arecibo message is a picture of the
Maybe
radio
it's like an
telescope,
asteroid
which was
belt.
used to send the message. Whoever sent the
Could be.
reply seems to
Maybe they're
understand
mining
this.
it.
Or it's like a binary or trinary, like a. Or maybe
Star
what it's
system.
showing is like a planet with like orbiting moons type thing.
The thing I was thinking of is what if it's a Dyson sphere?
Well, the Dyson sphere should go around the star, I would think, but maybe. Huh.
Or some other structure, like some sort of like moon base or like some
Yeah.
sort of like thing they built to do some sort of,
Or maybe they're just trying to display like
That.
how big it is.
or maybe this thing, the telescope that they actually sent it from is that.
Oh, interesting.
So what is this design meant to represent?
That's why they were able
Well,
to capture
just
it
a
so
year
quick.
earlier, this formation appeared in the same place. Is this the same object? Is this crop
Looks
formation
similar.
a representation
That's a cool.
of a machine used to communicate through space?
That's the picture of the. Yeah, I've seen that.
Is that the Viking one?
The one that looks like a face.
Yeah. So there's actually another one, and that'll be if you go to the 1309. I think we have it set up. So this is another.
Ooh,
So
interesting.
people were asking in general, I don't know who or what the circumstances were for people asking, but they were like, why don't they just, people were like, why don't they just speak English or whatever? And this is, so when we play this, they'll describe this disc as being a binary code, and it actually is encoded words. So it has
Interesting.
an actual message attached to it.
Once again, we see a face, but that's not a human face.
No.
And just like the
like
Arecibo
you're
message
gray.
was broadcast in binary code, the disk formation also contains binary code. And for the first time, we get an actual literal message. The code was translated to letters using ASCII, the encoding standard for electronic communication.
Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time.
Believe.
There is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit close.
Whoever it is that wants to communicate with us is using many different means. In 2004, Robert Ridge was deer
Do you want me to keep going there? That's interesting.
That's right where I stopped it, but
Huh.
So the message is pretty cryptic, but at the same time, like you got to think how far the distances and what the technology is being used, like to not only beam the message, but you're beaming the message to this place and creating a crop circle formation out of it. So you're sending some sort of,
Yeah.
Unless it is a physical thing coming here, which we'll get to shortly.
Well, see, the weird thing about this is like, do they cover because do crop circle formations typically like accompany sightings, like where possible of craft?
Yep.
Or objects anyway. Because it could just be orbs, I imagine. So in the case of orbs, like orbs are a special category of like UFO sightings where like it just appears to be like a ball of light, and they can be as small as like a fist. But I've heard them being big too, right? But like the small ones, I've heard people like lots of stories of like people seeing them like inside their own houses and stuff. Something like that seems like possibly some sort of drone tech, maybe even some sort of like remotely operated thing. I mean, of course, this is very human-centric analysis.
Using our own form of knowledge for it,
we could take the lessons from, Will Smith's Men in Black and the Galaxy.
Right.
Could be inside of a cat's little necklace. So, like, we don't know. Like, obviously, like, there could be some sort of miniature intelligent being that could be a perfectly big craft for them. But,
or like we saw with like Chris Bledsoe stuff, like the orbs themselves are the beings that are like more spiritual in essence.
Yeah.
Instead of being more like physical nuts and bolts, they're more spiritual in that when they come to you, it's more of in a state of you have to be in a state of like a mental state where you're willing to accept that. And with Chris Bledsoe, he's actually provided a lot of evidence towards what he's talking about. Like other people can see these orbs. Other people have experienced the phenomenon around him. He's got a lot of people who are, trying to figure out what it is he's experiencing, because it's obviously real. It's just how real, what is it? We don't know, know? And like he sees these orbs and he's seen them in his house too. Like he's seen them close proximity. And then a lot of times they end up being full on beings that he's having, interactions with where they kind of like shine out. And then like where the bowl came out of is like a mighty wind. And
I wonder if that sort of telescope technology that they're pointing to,
like a projector.
Is it some sort of just gigantic antenna that's like an object in their solar system that they've built, like some sort of space telescope, and it's just like out there picking up electromagnetic waves? Like it seems less likely to me, especially if so. Let's take the Arecibo message and try and understand the options for how it could have returned in 25 years.
Okay.
So option one is that on its travels in that direction, something else happened to be passing by and pick up the message.
Right.
Okay. That seems like the most conventional to our mind way that could have happened.
Yes.
There just happened to be someone passing by that picked up the message and, understood it.
Can I give you number two?
Go, I want to hear your number two because I have a different one too.
My number two would be that the message that there is no out there, in a sense of like when you talk about like multiverse, like simulation theory and like all these other ideas, like if you implant that on this, like the message could have gone nowhere, and it didn't take, the 25 years was just arbitrary as far as the time scale of it. Like it didn't matter how long it was going to take, and that the message was received immediately on these other layers, on these other layers,
consciousness.
Yeah, on these other layers of existence, and that whoever decided to respond, these grays or whatever they are, that could even be a reptilian for all I know,
Could be.
But anyway.
Yeah. So I haven't. Okay. So I'll call this number 3. What if that sort of telescope design they're showing isn't just a giant electromagnetic space telescope? What if once you are at the level of advancement where you are an interstellar species, where you can actually travel between star systems, which pretty much implies that you have figured out faster than light travel. Okay.
And time travel all in the same.
Okay, there's that. So we'll call that option 3, right? Like if you have faster than light travel, that implies time travel. So you could actually go back and return the message quicker. Mm-hmm. Another option is if that telescope is some sort of like gravity telescope, some sort of telescope that is able to like
form a tunnel
in space time
to get a message somewhere quicker.
Yes.
So it's like a cannon for high speed internet that just shoots it wherever it needs to be immediately or whatever.
Like
which
imagine,
in this case would be 25
imagine
years.
You want to observe a planet 25,000 light years away. You can point some sort of gravity telescope at it that like
distorts everything in front of
the space time in between,
send the message
so that you can observe that planet not as it was 25,000 years ago, but as it is now.
Or, there might be some delay, right? I guess not. Yeah, I guess not. It could just be that they took 25 years to be like, maybe we should respond to these guys. It's been 25 years.
Right. Or like, imagine this, like say you have that ability, right? Imagine it's like a knob you can turn that's like opening the tunnel, right? So if you're looking at it without the tunnel open, you're seeing 25,000 years ago Earth from their perspective, okay?
And as you turn it up, closer and closer and closer.
Yeah, it's going closer and closer in time, and you're picking up all possible messages that have happened in that 25,000 years.
So you can respond to all of it.
Right. So imagine having that technology and then being able to like point a telescope at different bodies in the universe and then sweep through time, picking up if there has been any message from the time it takes light to get here between that and now.
That would be crazy. I'd like one of those. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
We'll call it a gravity cannon.
The gravity telescope.
That's what we're calling it. Gravity. Yeah, but it's shooting. We're going to call it a gravity cannon.
Okay.
It's implied that gravity.
I mean, maybe you could even use technology like that to like leave something like a crop circle. But if people are seeing things that are like craft and stuff. So I want to go back on like the orbs. Like what if that is some form of like super advanced remote viewing? To where like you can place your consciousness elsewhere, but like you know how to like equip yourself with certain like tools and abilities,
or
like, as you're projecting it.
So this gravity cannon, I'm going to keep calling it gravity cannon. Anyway, this gravity cannon is going to require energy.
Of course.
So if for whatever reason the energy needs surpass the amount that they have, maybe what's actually these orbs and what's actually creating these messages is a much lower form of that. So it's a tiny same thing. You're not forming like enough to like send a ship through it or view it really, but what you are able to do is send like a pencil width version of that same thing through, and you're able to affect and use that same technology to make these kind of messages.
Right.
And we'll see too going forward and how these the majority of these are set apart from what we'll talk about as well, about being the hoaxers, the people who have picked this up and tried to hoax these things. There's a clear difference, but like maybe that's the same technology, and that's why it was saying it was sent from that. Maybe that thing can do both, right? It can send a tiny little beam to make messages wherever it wants to with low energy, but then when it wants to do something high energy, it opens up an actual physical portal
like
that they can
jump
travel through.
Yeah.
And then each of the ships themselves have the ability to do that same skipping thing, and that's what we see with all these UFOs and stuff. Is they're just
on a
doing
smaller
it on
scale.
a smaller scale. They're skipping through, but it doesn't take much to impress us.
Right.
So even that will be impressive, but to them, it's like we're just saving energy.
Right.
You know,
it's just more efficient, more targetable.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. But this stuff fascinates me because it gets me on these like, what if this? Like, what if this means that? You know?
Right.
But we'll continue. Let's take our first break, and we'll come back and we'll continue down this topic.
All right. So this first break, you will be hearing Not Talkin' by TJ McNulty. Enjoy.
I had to constitute my attributes, nor do I see past what I see. I'm a firm believer in believing, but to believe in you, I must first believe in me. So tell me your reasons for not telling me, I'll tell you how not to be. Will you be the reasons and I'll be the relief? Let's talk about how not talking is killing me. Well, always I have been a patron of the truth. One time is one too many to be misused. And you give me the smile that I was oh so used to. I won't have the courage to give what I deserve to you. So tell me your reasons for not telling me, and I'll tell you how not to be. Will you be the reason and I'll be the relief? Let's talk about how not talking is killing me. Well, never I had a feeling to constitute my attributes. Well, normally I just see past what I see. And to be a believer, you must first believe. And I wanna believe in us, but I don't believe in me. So tell me your reasons for not telling me, and I'll tell you how not to be. Will you be the reasons and I'll be the relief? Let's talk about how not talking is killing me. Will you be the reasons and I'll be the relief? Have I told you how not talking is killing me?
Woo!
Welcome back.
I like that song. That's one of my
that
favorite
song a lot.
songs on his album.
Yeah, I like that song.
Check out TJ's album Harmony on Apple Music and Spotify and all the good places. There will be links.
Do it.
Cool.
All right. So we left off talking about the Arecibo Message, the Arecibo Answer,
And then we
talked
flopped
about
to this
binary
video.
disc message.
Right, but we didn't actually play this. We just kind of paused on
True.
the image and talked about it. Oh no, we did play
we
this.
played
I
it.
rewound it.
That's towards the end
to
of
this
it,
part,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay,
But yeah, that was the message that it said, beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. Believe there is good out there. We oppose deception. And then it said, what did it say? go forward a little bit on that?
Yeah. It says
Conduit
Closing.
conduit closing. That's interesting because
Conduit, that gives you an idea. It's a conduit.
yeah. Well, that's
Right, so if we're
that's
gonna
kind of
imagine
what
this
inspired
is,
that like idea
thought,
I had. Yeah.
And that's what it gives me the idea too of like, the same way we have giant conduit and cables running across the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans to connect all of the different, continents and have, internet crossing borders and
Right.
continents and all these things. Same idea, right? But they have a higher technology.
Yeah. Beware the bearers of false gifts, which sounds like visitors who come and like promise you technology and solutions and
And their broken promises.
yeah.
So
yeah.
is it possible we've been duped by
Right.
such things, or
that
are they bewaring, or are they warning us of bearers of false gifts and broken promises here within our own ranks? Because there's all these. There's all these.
Is
and
this a
maybe it's the
message
same
to
thing.
our planet about
It's
visitors from outside, or is this a message to our citizenry about our leaders?
And if you go on more, much pain, but still time. Believe
Yeah.
there is good out there. And then it says, we oppose deception.
Well, the fact that it says there is good out there seems to contextualize the earlier part and make it seem like it's about visitors.
True. Or the fact that we are being decepted by our own is a admission of both, right? The people that
right.
are in power are maybe they're one and the same.
Puppets of
They're one and the same with, if they're not some sort of hybrid or some sort of camouflaged or cloaked alien, if they're,
Right.
like there
Or
are all these
either
conspiracy
that
theories
or,
of them being,
or they could just be like some sort of genetically manipulated or some like secret society that has passed down the ability to communicate with these people over the time.
and they've been deceiving us for however long, and these are beings that are saying there's good out there, don't worry.
It also sort of sounds like
You have time
from a
to-
religious lens, like the difference between like angels and demons, right? And like demons being fallen angels that could present as representatives of God, right? Because there is like within the whole UFO world, the context of contextualizing the visitors as what has in the past been understood as angels and demons.
some sort of spiritual being.
Right.
Well, and like we talked about in the Secret History, all things lead back to secret history, as we like to say here. When they talk about Lucifer being the false, or the fallen angel, and they talk about his actual role here in developing humans, and if that is the case and they've been here for this long, then maybe it's not actually what we think of the stories of the Bible as being more recent.
Yeah.
These are actually things that happened on an ancient time scale, and that things have gone way farther than we even think. Right? So like Lucifer being the fallen angel and things having changed, him being actually the bearer that, or the person that guides you into the afterlife to teach you about reincarnation.
Well, yeah. What if those false gifts it's talking about is this whole like technological revolution that has led us down the path of like creating
Materialism.
AI that can ultimately be the master in control?
Yeah.
It also makes me think of a waspy, which I will forever reference.
All roads
and
lead back
one
to
day-
Waspy. We always say that.
One day we will cover it. I will actually do some shows on it.
I'm going to hold you
But-
to it. I'm going to hold you to it.
It's just such a big book.
I'm interested in
It's
it.
just such
I'm
a big
interested.
book. It's like
Well, that's why I'm
1,200
not gonna read it.
pages.
You've already read it, right?
I've read like a chunk of it.
Oh, okay.
It gets really repetitive for a while because it's just like a long history of like the entire history of the earth and all the beings who have like spiritually ruled it across the decades and or centuries and millennia.
Yeah.
And it like covers the different reigns of beings.
I'm down to hear about that.
But like once you've read like the 20th reign, it sounds a lot like the 3rd and 4th and 5th.
Right.
So it feels a little like it made it hard for me to like keep going for a while. At the beginning, it's just like chock full of like super
interesting.
It's like their version of Genesis where it's like explaining like the origins.
But then it gets kind of boring for a while, and then maybe it gets more
exciting. I don't know where
it
goes after that, but like I haven't been able to slog through the repetition yet
to get to the more exciting stuff.
But like in that repetition, part of what makes it so repetitive is the pattern that what will happen is that essentially this like sort of like galactic universal empire that represents God, that's purpose is to like spawn and direct and grow life across the universe. Like they have people stationed here to like oversee Earth. And then they divide Earth into like kingdoms. And then sometimes the rulers, like over time, the rulers that are assigned here apparently are not in communication or kind of left alone for a while. And they can tend to lose faith over time and get corrupted.
They lose sight of their ultimate goal.
And instead of like ruling the place to like exalt God, they end up ruling the place to exalt themselves.
Right. Corruption.
Right. And then eventually there's some sort of reset, new leadership gets brought in, the old leadership gets pushed out, and then the cycle repeats. And that's why it gets so repetitive, because it happens over and over and over.
Yeah,
so that could be the sort of bearer of false gifts, the broken promises, the people who are like pretending to represent God to whoever is into the occult here, communicating with spiritual entities, promising that they're angels of God.
And they have all these promises being made to us, like, oh, in the future, we're going to release all these things. All you got to do is just, mine this gold for us.
But we have to beware because they're leading us down a path that is really like to their benefit rather
than the ultimate benefit of the universe or whatever, multiverse.
So anyway, all right. What's the next clip we want to do?
So...
Or where do we want to go from here?
I wanted to talk a little bit about Doug and Dave.
Doug and Dave.
So...
Double D.
So in 1991, Doug and Dave, these two people in England, claim to have been the ones doing all of the hoaxing.
Right.
You know what?
I remember hearing this story in the past.
I'm going to leave you on a cliffhanger there, because actually what I do want to do first is, since we already talked about it, let's cover some of this, the Orbs.
Oh, okay.
So if you can cue up the first clip I had you.
Yeah, this one from 8:30-ish.
5:42.
I have 8:36.
What's the next one?
Later than that.
Oh.
5:42. Anyway. I'll go to it. 5.
Oh, no, I know. No. Stay there.
Okay.
Go to the Instagram video. That's what it was. So this is from, before we play it, this is from, hold on.
Well, UAP files. Are you saying like the source?
So this
Oliver's Castle, Wiltshire.
Castle. Yep.
Wiltshire is what it says here. It says the only video ever recorded of a crop circle being formed.
Which is not true, but we'll let it slide because there's another.
Okay, cool. Here is this video.
1989.
There's a couple of lights down there somewhere.
This controversial film appears to show strange objects hovering above a cornfield.
Whoa.
Below, complex circle formations appear.
This is amazing.
So I'll pause that and then go back to the Y files video. So the first one actually do go back to 542. So this is the same incident, just covered through Y-Files and what he has to say over it.
Okay.
Like a new phenomenon, there's evidence they've been appearing for a long time. In the 9th century, Abigard, the
Maybe
bishop
you're right.
of Lyon
Actually,
in France,
sorry.
wrote about
Let's listen to
parishioners
this.
who were
Okay.
possibly engaged in devil worship or paganism. They were collecting seeds out of flattened circles in the fields and using them for fertility rituals. In 1686, Robert Plot, a professor at Oxford, wrote about crop circles. He even drew pictures of a couple that appeared near his home. He said they were formed by a flash of light. And once they were formed, animals wouldn't go near them. Around the same time, a pamphlet was released called The Mowing Devil. It describes how a farmer woke to see a bright light in his field that he thought was fire. When he went to investigate, he found a crop circle. It's called The Mowing Devil because the farmer said the circle was so neatly mowed that it could not have been done by a mortal man. John Leland served as librarian to Henry VIII. He wrote about patterns appearing in grass overnight. In 1937, a British science journal reported circles found in a field of barley and even included one of the first photos taken of a crop circle. In 1945, this photo was taken by a balloonist working for the RAF Parachute Training School.
That one looks like a bunch of like lemons.
Yeah, or like
Like
orange slices, or
Cross
like lemon.
sections. Yeah.
In 1952, the U.S. Air Force investigated circles found in Kansas. In 1963, Sir Patrick Moore, an astronomer writing for the New Scientist journal, investigated a formation in Chilbolton.
In the wheat fields were features taking the form of circular or elliptical areas in which the wheat had been flattened. One very well defined was an oval, 15 yards long by 4.5 broad. There was evidence of spiral flattening, and in one case there was a circular area in the center in which the wheat had not been flattened.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, that was a clip I was gonna do later. I remembered at the end, but that was a lot of the ancient. So
that's
that was
good,
a lot
like
of the
historical
context. Exactly.
Huh.
It gives you the reference as to what it like, you know, the origins of the phenomena. You know, it's not
Right.
something that started in the 1960s is when or 1930s is like the earliest recorded, video of one.
It goes much further back.
And it goes much further back than that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you subscribe to the 2 ropes and a board theory, like it can go back pretty much infinitely long by that technology. But like, we haven't yet got to the differences between the hoaxes and the quote unquote real ones. All right. Well, do you know what was the section you actually wanted to play on this?
So we'll come back to, okay,
actually, go ahead.
No, we'll continue on the Orbs. So it's 837. It's right after when that
837.
When that
ended.
ended.
That was the one I had queued
So
originally.
you can, you just play it from here.
Intelligently controlled.
Oh yeah, we see some sort of
floating light above a field.
Yeah.
It kind of blinks in and out.
You see, the object came down and it stopped for a long.
And then these are some more orbs being found near.
Whoa, there's people walking through the crop circle and there's still an orb flying overhead.
Tourists are already coming to see them, and there's still orbs in the field.
There's no movement in prevailing wind.
Whoa.
I can't think what that is.
I think it like gained altitude and started going even faster at the end there.
Yeah.
There's another crop circle behind it. You see that?
Yep. Oh, clearly a slowed down video here.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
That one looks like it's moving pretty quick.
Yeah. All right. So,
So you can stop it there.
So we got Chris Bledsoe's around here calling these things down, but like, yo, leave us a message.
Dude, and you know what that immediately, like what that looks like to me is like what it looks like when you use a magnifying glass to focus the sun's rays down on something and it creates a burning pattern?
The orb things?
Yeah. So like the orb things moving around, it reminds me of that beam of the light you get when you focus something with a magnifying glass. Like you focus the light.
Yeah, except for it's in the air rather than on the ground.
Right. Exactly.
Which is weird. So you're thinking some sort of like projection technology?
And that would explain why it's non-physical capabilities, right? It can travel at will. And maybe it can interact in some ways. Like it has an energy signature, so it's able to interact in whatever way it's able to. But
the Instagram one that showed the orb of the field as it formed, that's interesting. I wonder if that...
Let's watch the second one.
The second Instagram?
The second Instagram one.
Okay. So...
This is from Forbidden Science, and this is...
Forbidden Science _ on...
on Instagram.
On Instagram. All right, here we go.
Let's watch it. Yeah, we don't need that.
This looks like CGI to me.
This one looks more like CGI, but I still like the concept.
Yeah.
This could be just like a CGI recreation of what they would assume it would look like.
Yeah, because the way this got to be like an artist representation, what they think it might look like. Yeah, because see the way it's coming down, like it looks like a crossfade on a video.
Yep.
Like you're expanding like a brush on a video.
I was going to say the same thing because in some frames where you have the object right above the video, it lines up perfectly. But then now here it starts to expand quicker before the object can actually reach those areas.
Plus, I've yet to see any sort of UFO that leaves like a tail like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a cool like visualization. Whereas this looks like what you see when you see orb videos.
This looks like a Chris Bledsoe video on like with a crop circle being formed,
Right. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Chris Bledsoe Instagram, I'll link it again because that shit is crazy.
It's crazy. And he posts pretty regularly.
Yeah. And the way these ones form does not look like a typical like CGI crossfade type effect. These they seem to become like they seem to appear like become more and more defined rather than fade in.
Right. Yeah, like it like the outline appears, but then like the more of the
which you would expect if you're getting
shows up.
Like the crop slowly folding, like the difference between the edges would become more and more defined rather than like the fading.
Yeah, I agree. This one is much more convincing.
This one seems more convincing.
And it's been reported for, the last 50 years. Like this was from an original YouTube, not YouTube, sorry. But original like news reporting.
Yeah, the top two comments on this, my gut always tells me this one is real. And then the next one, the fact this was debunked decades ago and you still post it like it's real, crazy. So, dude, there's always going to be people on both sides.
And get some memes thrown in there.
Yeah. Huh. Okay.
So we'll jump to the 2030 I have. And this is going to be comparing man-made crop circles that we'll talk about Doug and Dave, but other people have done these as well. It's not just them. They're just one of the more funny stories. Some of the other stories are a little bit more, covert espionage types.
Yeah.
We'll see. So we'll start here. You're at 2030?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll go till about 2215.
A formation in 2003 was especially puzzling. In parts of the design, the plants weren't completely flattened. They were bent a few inches from the top. It's been described as like the grooves of a record. How do you make this with planks and rope?
You don't.
You don't. Another sign of a genuine circle can be seen, especially in wheat. In late summer, when wheat turns gold, the kernels become heavy and bend over from the weight. They also become stiff and are impossible to straighten. But the wheat within a crop circle, the kernels have straightened out and can't be bent. So what would do this? Radiation. Wheat stalks are separated by structures called apical nodes. These are like the knuckles on your fingers.
Yeah.
In the 1990s, biophysicist William Levengood started analyzing plants taken from crop circles. His team found the nodes in crop circle wheat were elongated, and in many cases, they were ruptured.
Oh, a rupture on an elongated node? I think they make a cream for that.
Yeah.
This rupture is called an expulsion cavity. The only way this could be replicated is with bursts of microwave radiation. The way your microwave oven works is it heats up water, fats, and sugar in food. Microwave energy is heating up the water in the wheat stalk nodes. The water turns to steam and then they burst, just like popcorn. Now you can't fake this. It happens to the plant internally.
There's no way you could hoax that.
People who claim to have witnessed crop circles being made, and there's quite a few witnesses, report seeing a mist over the pattern immediately after it's formed. This mist is actually steam coming from the plants that were flash heated by microwave radiation. While experimenting with radiation, Levengood found crop circle seed had a huge increase in growth compared to non-crop circle seed. By exposing seeds to short, controlled bursts of radiation, they grow bigger and faster than seeds not exposed to radiation. Another experiment showed that wheat harvested from within a crop circle has a much higher amount of protein than wheat outside the circle. So there's evidence that whatever energy is used to create crop formations is leaving residual traces of this energy in the area. Some crop formations are covered in a dusting of microscopic spheres of magnetized iron, specifically meteorite iron. Researchers call this a magnetic glaze. These spheres are usually found around the perimeter of a formation, and they're distributed linearly, not randomly. Because the iron particles are magnetized perfect spheres, it means they were melted and formed within a highly energetic magnetic field. When people are inside crop formations, many are affected by electromagnetic radiation. Just look at this.
Ja, jeg har rød. Jeg får motsatt, men du ser det som det. Guri måle. Du blir helt sånn.
So
Og nå blir det borte. Nå blir det borte. Da blir det vanlig.
their blood is changing, the color of their blood and the veins.
Ja.
Ja, visst.
As part of an experiment, a woman with an enlarged thyroid sat in a crop formation for 2.5 hours. While being monitored by a doctor, her thyroid shrunk by 40%. Often cameras, watches, and other electronic devices stop working inside a crop circle. In fact, pregnant women and people with pacemakers are discouraged from going near one. Now, to skeptics, all this talk about energy sounds woo-woo, but I just showed you the real effects on plants and people. Now, it's fair to say that the elongated nodes and growth rates of wheat could be a coincidence. It's also fair to say that the physical reactions experienced by people could be psychosomatic.
Yeah, interesting. Who was the doctor that they interviewed here?
Yeah, we'll have to get his name.
Yeah, I want to search for some of his articles.
Yeah. But yeah, that shows you there's a clear difference. And I believe if you kept going, it showed before it showed all that evidence, it showed what you find when a man, like somebody else does it.
Yeah.
And like when they do use the board and stuff, they're just broken. They're folded and they're broken wherever it is that the board hit the plant and folded it. So it's there's no gentle laying.
You had
of
me
these.
queue up 1704, so maybe that's what that was, is the fakes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this was the examples of the quote unquote genuines. Here's the examples of what are clearly faked crop circles. By the way, this one looks like shit.
Yeah, it does.
When asked how they created the circle without making tracks in the crop, Doug said they pole vaulted into the field.
Whoa. Did you just say pole vaulted?
Yep. He said in an interview that you should have seen us running through the fields with our sticks sailing over the corn.
Yeah, I would like to see that, actually.
Oh, me too, pal. Apparently these men, in their 60s, pole vaulted into fields carrying their wood boards. They laid down a perfect crop formation and pole vaulted out again. Now, Doug looks pretty fit for an older guy, but he's getting winded walking in a circle. Pole vaulting seems a little outside of his athletic range.
Yeah.
They also added details to their...
Plus, pole vaulters have a freaking pad to land on. You're just gonna land on the hard ass, or you're gonna land on the fucking wheat and not leave a trace.
Well, he says pole vaulting, but what I'm imagining is stilts. What I'm imagining is two giant long poles. And he's like walking with these poles through over the wheat fields. There's no way, obviously, that actually happened. And he goes on.
60-year-old man pole vaulting through fields.
I think in this same part, they talk about how like some of them are like when these two guys claim.
I'm just imagining my dad pole vault. He would die.
God. Yeah, no, there's no way.
He wouldn't get up in the first place.
And he definitely ain't landing the second or third footing. Like, you may get the second one off, but the third one, you're going down. Yeah. You're going down.
I'm just imagining, ow, 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 as he's running.
Let's continue.
Story as other crop circles were found. One day, a couple of people investigating a circle told Doug they were looking for a jelly-like substance that was found in a formation. Doug told them it was probably waste ejected from a plane. Later, Doug had a story about making a crop circle, and while he was doing it, he got hit in the head with a piece of frozen waste ejected from a plane's toilet.
And they call those Boeing bombs.
Right.
Yeah, big old frozen chunk of poopy.
He stumbled back to his car, dazed, with blood trickling down his face. The problem is, planes don't dump waste over that area. It would be illegal, dangerous, and disgusting. Another story came out about people finding bits of metal thought to be meteorites at crop formations. Soon after that, Doug and Dave's crop circles had little bits of iron scattered all around. So, a few things. Did Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley create some crop circles? Yes. When Doug and Dave came forward, about 1,500 crop circles had been seen in at least 23 countries.
Oh, well, you can't pole vault to Belgium.
Right, even Doug couldn't do that. But they inspired a lot of copycats. Soon, most crop formations were man-made. So, is there a scientific way to tell if a crop circle is not a hoax, but genuine?
And enter the next clip we watched.
Yeah, it goes on a little bit. Let's continue until about 2030 where the next one picks up.
Okay.
There is. Most crop formations are man-made. The vast majority are. And there are telltale signs of this. Sometimes spotting a man-made crop circle is as simple as finding a footpath through the field leading up to the design.
Right.
But often crop formations intersect the lines made by tractors called tram lines, which can hide tracks. To spot a hoax, we look at the plants themselves. Man-made crop circles done by flattening plants with boards are destructive to the plants. You'll see cracks and bruises on the stalks. On the ground, the crushed plants look messy. The leaves and flowers will be mashed to the ground. Marks will be visible on only one side of the plant where it was stomped by a plank of wood. Many of those marks are creases where you can actually bend the stalk. Genuine crop circles don't look like this at all. First, the lay of the pattern will flow like water. There's a gentleness to it, an elegance. And many times the stalks are layered and even braided. In genuine crop circles, most plants aren't damaged. They'll continue to grow horizontally and then after a few days return to their vertical position. In this formation found in May 2005, the flowers weren't damaged at all. They were somehow laid down gently. A group of clumsy men with wooden boards couldn't do this. We know this because it was tried. A group of crop circle makers attempted to reproduce this formation. From the air, it looks pretty good. But on the ground, the man-made version is a mess. The plants are trashed. A formation in 2003 was especially puzzling. In parts of the design, the plants weren't completely flattened. They were bent a few inches from the top.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's where we lead into the next one. It gives you a lot of comparison there.
That's the thing. And you find this pattern over and over and over and over in like topics that people label as conspiracy or paranormal, right? Where the argument for the crazy phenomenon is like pretty detailed. There's a lot of lanes of evidence.
But it's overshadowed.
It's highly detailed. And then someone comes along to debunk. They do a very crude job of it that gets 80% of the way there.
Well, and
in a charitable reading. And because it does that, that's good enough for the people who want to discount the idea. And this is where like the idea of cognitive bias comes in, right? The idea of like believing something because you want to. So if someone comes along and does a crappy debunking job that gets you 80% of the way to an explanation, the fact that they got you 80% of the way, you're willing to just smudge the other 20%.
Yeah.
Right. And like, just because you can make something that looks similar to an quote unquote authentic crop circle with a board and rope, that doesn't mean you're explaining all of these other detailed phenomenon that the real researchers are pointing out.
And that's the problem is like you get these phenomena, these real phenomena, which takes off, right? Like people are always immediately interested. Like even with Roswell, right?
Right.
It was
like
reported
the weather balloon
immediately.
Idea.
It was reported immediately, and even the Air Force had made a statement saying it was an
Right.
unidentified flying object.
And then they go back and change it.
And in the meantime, yes, that specific one happened quicker in time. But if it doesn't happen as quick, right, where the government doesn't give you anything at all right away, you have time for hoaxers to come out and be like, this is a great way to get publicity and to mess with people and to,
Right.
you know, it's like old age, like 1990s memeing.
So you can see like one motivation being like to hoax just for fun, right? Like, ooh, I'm going to make my own. And then you and the boys can have a laugh about all this crop circle that made the news. You really did it. Another motivation can be like CIA, disinfo, PSYOP, where you're trying to purposely throw off the difference between genuine and fake. And so maybe you even fund people to like take some people who enjoy the hobby of faking crop circles and buying some plane tickets to other countries.
That is a great segue, and I don't want you to lose your thought, but we're up on a break, and we're going to jump right back in after our break on that exact point.
Yeah.
CIA and also just hoaxers doing their thing, being funded.
Sweet.
So
Sweet. All
let's
right.
jump back in after this break.
This is called Make You by Stevie Nader. Enjoy. Make you like a crop circle.
Feel better when I tell you forever.
Or not.
Make you feel better when I tell you forever. Feel better when I tell you forever, ever, ever, ever. Make you feel better when I tell you forever, ever, 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 ever.
She faded, I'm faded too. Faded, I'm faded too. She faded, I'm faded too. Faded, I'm faded. I woke up before the sun. Really ain't one for sleeping by the woman of my dreams. And I ain't much of a dreamer. Ciroc and Pellegrino on rocks. We out in Reno and walk out the casino. Hit slots for a few Cinos. She faded, I'm faded too. Grabbing me out in public, telling me that she loves it. We taking it to the room, and maybe I'm taking shrooms. I'm probably taking shrooms. It's one up with the Princess Peaches. I'm eating brunch like it's noon. Hey, baby, we can do it. Take your time, take your time. I'ma give you this here best shit of your life, of your life. Just some wine, sip some wine. We gon' bear for a while. I know a couple ways to make you smile, make you mine. Alright, 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 let's go. 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 Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Make you feel better when I tell you forever, ever, ever, ever. Make you feel better off of something I can't feel. Hallucinations, losing patience, the pace is racing. What's real now? I'm just trying to swerve to these blurred lines. These turbines ain't fast enough. Either that or I'm faded, faced it, base waist to the fattest. This mind state that I'm standing in ain't right, cause I've been staring back into this mirror, telling my fist not to take flight. What I really need is my painkiller, my space filler, my love. My beta station gon' stay trill, color my day quiller, my drug, I need that. It feel better when we lay back and go slow. It may take forever, but it makes it better when we both know we both grow. So I'll take this shot of this Bronco while you babysit on that glass. I'll lay back on this cruise control until we hit the flow with that gas. It's alright.
You feel better when I tell you forever. Let's go. Let's go. Make you feel better when I tell you forever, ever, ever, ever. Let's go. Make you feel better when I tell you forever. Let's go. Let's go. Make you feel better when I tell you forever, ever, 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 ever. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Welcome back.
All right.
So that was Stevie Nader, and featured in that song was Sean Lamar. He's a rapper from the group called DeLorean, which is DLRN. If you want to search him, if you liked his sort of flow, he's a really good rapper.
Nice.
But yeah,
He's local too?
he's local. Yep.
Nice.
John worked on a whole project with him, like a solo project, which I don't know if that ever came out, but yeah, his work with DeLorean is sick.
Yeah.
DeLorean is just him and a producer homie of his called John Reyes, who makes the beats and then he raps. But yeah.
Nice.
So if you like his flow, check out DeLorean. I'll leave a link also.
Sick.
All right,
so yeah, we were talking about the
we
difference
left off
between the real and the fake crop circle evidence, right? So like you've got the sloppy man-made ones that are, you know, breaking these stalks in one direction on one side, and then you've got these seemingly real crop circles that are laid down gently in spiral patterns
and will raise back up.
And will raise back up as if nothing happened. And actually, while they're regrowing, they grow sideways until the time that they do pop back up. So they're still growing while they're on the ground.
And the stalks
straighten
out, like the actual...
And the yield is higher.
The pods
the protein content is higher.
Yeah.
So there's all this evidence that shows the difference between these two. And I just thought it was funny. I wanted to make it known. And it's a serious note too. The guys Doug and Dave, who claim to be the ones who are hoaxing
the pole vaulters,
who are the ones making the crop circles, were paid thousands of dollars for their story by an unknown source, but it came out when they sued the government or some affiliation to the government, some like 3-letter affiliation. They sued them to get the other half, and it's in the Y-Files episode that he talks about too.
Doug and Dave sued the government because they didn't get the full payment they were promised?
They were promised, yeah, exactly. So it came out that they were paid by some sort of intelligence agency or some sort of government body. And then, so we go into, like, we were talking about the, like, kind of like debunking the idea of crop circles and like how they've found some are real, but there's still a large portion of these that are fake.
Mm-hmm.
So the next example of that I wanted to bring up was Colin Andrew. He is a researcher from England who has been following all of these crop circles since the 60s, I believe. Maybe a little later, the 70s, I think, is when he was starting him. So let's go to 3634.
Okay, here we go. This is a really cool formation, by the way.
Yeah, right off the bat, you get a really cool, like, geometrical, symbolic.
It's
thing.
circular.
It looks like a
It's
two
got,
black holes that are like rotating around, and like it almost seems like these diamonds are like the gravity.
It's like a gravitational field between two bodies,
two masses,
like a binary star system, almost,
or black hole even.
Yeah,
binary black hole is like
sure.
I've seen a visualization recently on.
I mean, this
when I'm
could be
scrolling
like
through.
displaying like the directionality of a gravitational field
like
between
you see how
two
it goes
masses.
vertical to horizontal as you get into the inside, where they're pulling directly at each other.
It's
But
almost
as he
like-
goes out, it's pulling more in the direction.
It's almost like vectors.
Mhm.
Yeah. Huh. Cool. All right. Let's go from here.
Intelligence at work. Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher asked her cabinet to find out what the hell was going on. The following summer, Operation Blackbird was launched. Blackbird was a 3-week surveillance operation with the goal of filming a crop circle forming in real time. The project
This
was
is the thing you
planned by
mentioned
prominent crop circle.
on the last episode we talked about, and you didn't have all the details, but it's this.
This is it. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Colin Andrews. Got it.
Researchers Colin Andrews and Pat Delgado. It was sponsored by the BBC and Japanese national television. Not only did the project have the blessing of the British government, but the crops to be filmed were on land owned by the Ministry of Defense. By working with the MOD, acres of farmland could be cordoned off to keep out hoaxers and prevent any genuine crop circles from being trampled by a curious and excited public. The military had every inch of the field covered with cameras. They had night vision and even infrared cameras to detect body heat. If a circle was going to form, it would definitely be seen. This was a huge event. Millions of people around the world watched, and every day Colin Andrews would appear on TV and describe the day's events. On day 2, a crop circle appeared, and Colin Andrews went on television and spoke very enthusiastically about the discovery. And then everything came crashing down. The formation was a hoax. Not just a hoax, but an embarrassing one. The design was crude, and placed in the center of the circle was an astrology board game. Colin Andrews, a serious investigator.
What?
Yeah.
An astrology board game was placed in the center of the crop circle.
And as we continue, like, imagine this guy, Colin Andrews, right here. We're pause on him.
He's
he wants to be a serious researcher in this field. And because the topic had been taken so seriously
And
before this event, he was touted. Like, he was like,
and he thought this was his big chance to like have a real public, like well documented case.
Yeah. And so it continues on to what happened to him and what happened with this case. But like, he was serious and he was really enthusiastic about this whole thing. And for this to happen on national television in prime time, everybody hyped it up.
Dude, the astrology board game is like a middle finger to it all.
100%.
I mean, if you're into astrology, I don't mean to denigrate astrology.
Yeah. Right.
I actually intend on doing a deep dive into astrology in the future. I just haven't gotten there yet. But like,
well, yeah, it was used in this moment to be a middle finger, because at the time most people didn't take that very seriously.
Right. It is a thing that like the quote unquote scientific skeptical minded people like use as a poster child for like scammy BS woo-woo
psychics
topics.
and
not saying I agree with that. Like I only agree to an extent in that like once you get into these things of like intuition and like less sort of like known physical principles that explain how these things work, like astrology, like palm reading, like divination practices of all sorts.
Tea leaves.
Sure, tea leaves, or like what's the rods?
The dowsing rods.
The dowsing rods.
Yeah.
Like,
any form of channeling or any form of
yeah. Like in any of those things, there will be by definition, like there will be a group who takes themselves very seriously and like is at least thinks they are being honest, I believe are being honest. But then there's definitely a group within it that are charlatans that are there to just make money because no one can prove that they're a liar. So as long as they can do a good enough job faking, they can make a bunch of money by opening a psychic shop or opening an astrology practice.
Which is kind of what Doug and Dave are in this case, right? Like they're the more like they're the charlatans. They're the ones who know enough to be able to fake it because they want to make the money and they want to be famous and they want to have the news interviews and this and that, right? But let's continue. Let's finish this part, and then it'll spark more of this kind of conversation as we go.
All right, here we go.
And the face of the crop circle phenomenon was humiliated.
Somebody's had a laugh, they've had a joke, they've actually done none of us any good. That sets these sort of things, only set the research back.
In the span of an afternoon, the field of crop circle research went from mainstream science to fringe theory, and it's been there ever since.
Hang on.
What?
Dude. Okay, so I understand now. So when was the timing of this? I don't know if I missed it or
it was in the early 90s.
It looks like the 90s.
Early 90s,
from based on the footage. So
I believe 91.
If this was a thing that was actually garnering mainstream scientific attention. That's exactly why it would have been targeted for a psyop, a disinfo campaign.
Because it started getting traction.
Right. And the last thing you want if you're trying to misdirect people off of the UFO spiritual, topics is to have a bunch of scientists taking something that will lead you somewhere if you take it seriously.
Yep.
They don't want them taking it seriously.
They don't want them to find the answer.
You need a public humiliation event in order to give all the skeptical-minded by nature scientists something to hold up as the poster child of why you can
never
dismiss the entire field.
Never even address it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
If the army had the whole thing blocked off and covered with cameras, how come they didn't see nothing? It was a setup.
It was a setup. Well, allegedly.
Totally a setup.
Colin Andrews believes, and I think there's plenty of evidence to support his theory, that the army intentionally wanted to discredit him and the entire crop circle phenomenon. That doesn't mean the military didn't believe in crop formations. Quite the opposite.
Right.
At the same exact time the highly public Operation Blackbird was going on, the army was running a secret surveillance operation a few miles away on Silbury Hill. In fact, they allegedly had film of bright orbs flying over the fields just to the south of the hill. But this operation only became known later. It appears that Blackbird was sleight of hand. Get the public focused on Blackbird, while the real operation took place a few miles away. Even now, when crop circles or glowing orbs appear, it's not uncommon for military helicopters to show up. Not only do the helicopters patrol the area, but they'll also chase the orbs around the countryside. Clearly, the military believes that crop formations are something more than simple hoaxes. But after the Blackbird fiasco, none of this mattered. Crop circles were debunked, and Colin Andrews became a fringe character. Colin's partner, Pat Delgado, was so disheartened by the Blackbird hoax that he retired and gave up his research.
Sounds like Deep State wins again, eh?
But that's not the end of the story.
Go on.
Colin Andrews may have become fringe in the public's eye, but he was a serious investigator, and crop circles were a real phenomenon. Even without mainstream support, he continued his work, and plenty of people supported him. Believers in crop circles were now fringe believers, but they still believed. This could be a problem for the government. They couldn't allow crop circles back into the mainstream.
We can pause it there, and what he was going to go into, just to summarize, was the connection between intelligence agencies and some of the hoaxers around the world, some of the copycats. They began their own organization, seemingly. So there's, I can't remember their names, but we'll reference this video, and you should go watch the video if you want to get all these details. But there was a few people who started this website called Circle Makers. .net or .uk or something. It was like some British site, and I don't know if it's still active. It might be. Yeah,
circlemakers.org and .co.
So, yep, that's it. So, when they dug into the website, it mentions it has a lot of keywords that are associated with it, and some like well-known like CIA and British intelligence like PSYOP people are mentioned in a lot of these. And this is an organization that is funding.
This website looks so like 2000s.
Yeah. I don't know how updated it is, but so the people associated with this website had gone to college at a place that was later found out to be literally adjacent to an old MI6 headquarters, and it was common knowledge that the MI6 would recruit right out of college, right? So a lot of these the makers of this were graduated from college that was right next door to a secret MI6 base, and that they were likely, and they reference a ton of CIA document. And when the Y-Files people dug into it, it's actually funded. The website is like hosted by or is linked to, gives a link to a CIA or MI6 recruiting website. So it's like pretty well entrenched in Dean's surfing this. That's why I keep getting distracted. I'm looking at it too.
Yeah, I'm looking through the circlemakers.org.
Yeah.
They've got a bunch of exhibits of crop circles they've made. And one of them is a big freaking Sudoku grid. Oh my God, dude. Look, it says here, UK broadcaster Sky One to have a new TV show called Sudoku Live, which is presented by Carol Vorderman. Sudoku is a logic craze that, according to the PR blurb we were sent, is sweeping the nation. Although when the call came in, we have to admit we'd never heard of it. Sky asked us to pull off a PR stunt to publicize the launch of the show. So we decided to go for a world record and create the largest puzzle on Earth. We used white tarpaulins and plastic sheeting to create the design. Sky One ran a competition to coincide with the creation of the massive Sudoku grid, asking people to try and solve the puzzle. The winner was awarded £5,000.
Wow.
So they basically professionally take crop circle creation commissions. Here's a Bigfoot one they made. It says, power to your feet. This is crazy, dude. It's not the same. It like doesn't, oh man. Oh, such a psyop. All right, well, should we take a little break, or you got more to go here?
Go back to the video and see where we're at.
Yeah, we were at this 40-30. I think that's the last video you had queued up.
Yeah.
Let's
play a few, like 30 more seconds of that.
Okay.
British intelligence began a disinformation campaign, and to help them spread disinformation, they brought in the best.
CIA.
Yeah. In his 1999 book, Cosmic Top Secret, The Unseen Agenda, author John King got Colin Andrews to sit for an interview. Colin knew that the only way hoaxers could get onto that field during Blackbird was if it was an inside job. When Colin made the announcement that a crop circle appeared, he hadn't even seen it yet. It was pitch black. He was pressured to make the announcement, so he did. He didn't report what he had seen with his own eyes. He reported what was described to him by the army. As soon as the sun came up, he knew it was a hoax, but there was nothing he could do. He had a deal with the military that they would provide people, equipment, and land, but he had to cooperate with them.
Big mistake. You shake hands with the military-industrial complex, you're making a deal with the devil.
Yep. According to Colin, phase 1 of the disinformation campaign was to debunk crop circles with Operation Blackbird. Phase 2 was Doug and Dave, who showed up a year later. Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley admitted to being the makers of crop circles. And to this day, that's the official explanation. Colin doesn't think they're part of the...
Wow. Okay, so you're telling me that Operation Blackbird had set up all these cameras and didn't catch Doug and Dave making these crop circles with boards and rope?
Right. And you have military personnel on the site?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's clearly an inside job. Clearly they let whoever it was that made the crop circle do it, whether it was them or somebody else.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And he continues his research. He's active on Facebook.
What was the guy's name again?
Colin Andrews.
Colin Andrews. I need to...
I've got his Facebook.
Does he have a book?
Yeah, his book. His book is linked in the
We should do a show on his book.
I'm going to read it. Yeah. That's what I was looking at before. I'm going to read the
because Y-Files is great. Like they do a good like overview, but I really want to hear what
specifics
the expert, the scientist, has to say on all this stuff.
Yeah. So we'll be right back.
Adios. We'll be back. Welcome back.
Hello. All right, welcome back for the last segment.
This was a pretty long break. We had some crying kiddos.
Yeah. We had some toddler mouth. No, I'm just kidding.
So, did you have anything else you wanted to like wrap up on the crop circle topic at all?
So there was one thing that I didn't mention that he mentioned at one point in this is that people are researchers are speculating why these are happening, where they're happening.
Oh, interesting.
And one of the data points that they find at a lot of these different sites is a high chalk content in the bedrock.
Oh, interesting.
So they think it might have something to do with like an electrical, like there might be some reason that chalk would be handy for whatever. And I guess chalk,
whatever tech they're using to create the crop circles.
Yeah, because in some cases they're like right on top of chalk aquifers is what they call them. Like
interesting.
Chalkwifers, I guess, if you want to
Chalkwifer. That sounds like a chocolate water reserve.
Yeah, it does. Chalkwifer. But it's the other kind of chalk. So yeah, that was one thing that he pointed out in the video, that, you know, some people speculate about. There's no proof that it has anything to do with it other than it might be a coincidence, I guess. But
Yeah.
it could also have something to do with where you put your crops too.
Yeah.
Right. And then crops are over that type of soil. I don't know.
So, like, after like prepping for this episode, like, where does it leave you with crop circles?
Me personally, I believe, I don't know about believe, but I am strongly leaning towards it being real in a lot of the cases. Like, a lot of this evidence about them, the differences between the man-made ones and the real ones, like, it's pretty obvious. Like, you would even intuitively say, like, it's obvious. Like, if you see something that's like so beautiful as, like, even like the ones where they talked about, where he talked about the stalks not being folded all the way down, but only a few feet down from the top, them being folded, and it making like this groove pattern, almost like the grooves of a record player that may, if you played it, if you were to take a 3-dimensional model of it, maybe it did play a message. Like, if you were able to like input that into a vinyl record, maybe it did play. And remember that video we watched of like three-dimensional visualization of crop circles?
Yeah.
Like, that might be something that is a great way to investigate these, right?
To analyze them.
And to like find out if they actually are portraying some sort of physical thing, right?
Yeah.
Like some sort of mathematical thing or some sort of message.
What do you...
I think that...
On the message topic, do you lean a direction there? Like, do you think...
I think it's a generic message. I think it's a generic enough that anybody could have come up with it. So I'll give it that. Like, it's not pointed enough, and it doesn't give us enough detail for me to like really think that it's somebody who has outside knowledge.
Yeah,
of what's going on Earth.
What was the researcher's name? Because I want to see.
Colin Andrews is the main researcher of crop circles.
I wonder if he has done analysis of like. So a lot of them seem to be like geometric forms. I wonder if there's been any sort of analysis as like trying to disentangle like a message out of them.
Oh, I know with the ones that are obvious, right? Like the binary code, like it's an obvious representation of a code that we are familiar with. Again, that could just be because whoever's faking it,
right,
could also know how to write in binary, right? Like even like the Arecibo message or answer in response to the message. It could just be somebody who's very familiar with what
humans
they did there,
are capable of taking the Arecibo message and concocting a fake answer for sure. But
the fact that it happened 25 years later, so whereas it's a short time for them to have responded, it's still a long time for somebody to have not responded earlier.
Yeah, that's an interesting
point.
What
I mean?
That's a really interesting point. One thing that stands out to me is in the ones that have been shown on photo and video of that are clearly fakes.
Yeah.
One thing that stands out to me is the edges.
Yes.
The edges of the parts that are folded down versus the parts that are stood up, like they're really rough in the man-made ones.
Yeah, it's not as
smooth
as you would assume. Yeah, and it reminds me of like the stone vases, right? Like the difference between the fake and the real stone vases that were made.
Right.
You know, it's like the perfection and the delicacy of delicacy or delicacy, I don't know, the delicate nature of the vases, and how precise they were.
Right.
And whereas the fakes of the same time period, supposedly.
Well, there's a difference between them being carved out of stone and them being made out of ceramic.
Sure. Yeah. But then there's even Actually, yeah, I think a lot of the ceramics are they're more mimicry. Like they're trying to.
They're even painted to look like granite,
right? Because they want to mimic what it is that they saw from these other ones that they found in the ground,
right?
Or found
and they're
in
doing the best they can do with.
And they're like, these are amazing. How do they do it?
Right.
How do they do it? We don't even have that technology. Let's just pretend like we do and like make these, cheap replications and make them look like it.
Everyone wants one of those in their fancy villa, but
we can't produce them like that.
Yeah. So let's produce ones that look like that and sell them to the rich people.
Exactly. And it's a similar idea for these crop circles too, except the people you're selling it to is the American people, and you're
selling it as a lie, though.
You're selling it as a lie to, maybe make you infamous, or at least you're being paid on like some back channel, like by like Doug and Dave did.
Yeah.
They didn't get paid the whole amount because they probably sucked at it.
Yeah.
And then they had to go and sue because there was an agreement.
Huh.
So they're trying to, and he does go a little deeper into the Wi-Fi stuff, right? And the Wi-Fi goes a little deeper. I mean, and he talks about Richard Doty being a part of the PSYOP to discredit, and he's the same guy who discredited the UFO stuff.
Right.
So it's all the same characters and the same actors who are across, up the whole spectrum of UAP and aerial phenomenon, orbs, all these things, right?
Yeah.
And they're sent to, disseminate lies enough to discredit the rest of the movement.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Because I feel like,
circles, but what did you feel at the end of it?
Well, I feel frustration.
Yeah.
Because of the whole PSYOP hoax of the fakery that basically removed any scientific interest off the topic. Yeah. Like, I feel frustration that there aren't the amount of eyes and there aren't the studies and the budgets going into trying to understand them that there would have been otherwise. So the movie Contact, right? It's one of my favorite movies ever made, by the way. If you haven't seen that movie, just go watch it. What are you doing? Especially if you listen to this podcast and you haven't seen it. There's the part in the movie where they receive the message from outer space, and for a time there, they don't necessarily know what it means, and then there's a time where they start decoding it, right? Like they're starting to pick up patterns. Like there's the first initial thing that makes them know for sure that it's an artificial signal, which is that it happens in prime numbers.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And then by analyzing it further, they can realize that there's some sort of binary code layered on top of that. And then they realize that binary code is making up pictures. And then they realize they're rebroadcasting the very first broadcast from Earth that went out into space, which is actually the Olympics in the 30s, and it's actually Hitler announcing the opening of the Olympic Games, which is crazy.
Way.
Yeah, which causes them to call in the NSA and all the intelligence agencies, and then they keep going, and there's layers and layers, and the ultimate breakthrough comes in rethinking it. They get these coded pages, but they can't figure out how to put them together and they realize it's actually a 3D puzzle. And once you build it into a 3D structure, then all these symbols come out, and that's when they realize the whole thing is blueprints. Okay. And anyway, I say that to come back to crop circles and say that by purposely conducting a PSYOP to discredit and misdirect and stigmatize the whole topic so that the science community stops taking it seriously, we don't have the resources on it anymore. And I feel like
all you need is the resources to really get any kind of headway in this.
Well, it's really the brain power. Like the resources just buy the brain power.
Well, I mean, the brain power. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I feel like for the ones that have like the characteristics that are common to the quote unquote genuine crop circles, like without that brain power on them, trying to decode them, if no one's really taking them seriously and it's only like the odd, obsessive, scientifically minded person that's on them,
and sometimes it's people who are self-taught because otherwise,
like I feel like we're missing out because what if there's coded messages there? What if it's a network of messages that you need to be taken in whole and refer to each other in order to reassemble like the Rosetta Stone of crop circles to be able to read them, you know? And what if they're just beaming down messages that are very important?
Right.
And so it's a little frustrating to me when a topic that seems to have enough evidence to be taken seriously just gets poo-pooed off to the side.
Yeah.
And
and then we and everybody else just has to take what evidence still comes out from the fringes, the edges, and put together our own picture of what's actually going on. We don't have the luxury of like institutions focused on this where we can, like, it's not just an independent investigation by people who are interested on their own terms, you know?
I mean, I'm sure there is a decentralized internet-based investigation that is happening, and maybe they have made more progress than we know about. And if you know like where to point us to find more on stuff like that, like please do. Like I want to know more. But it's just the same frustration with all of these sorts of topics we talk about. Like there's the duality, right? There's the accepted, like quote unquote legitimate view on the topic. And then like there's the, if you actually look at the detailed evidence and you realize there's two versions of the topic, there's the PR version that tries to get everyone to not take it seriously. And then there's a deeper version where like there actually is a lot of credible evidence that there's something more going on there. I don't know. It's very intriguing. Like I feel like we're at a point like we were with hieroglyphs before the Rosetta Stone was decoded,
right.
You know, was discovered, where like we've got all these hieroglyphics, like we've got this ancient Egypt clearly trying to talk to us,
right?
But we have no way to decode what their language is.
And if these nuts and bolts crafts are being recovered, and there's all these stories about them having all these different inscriptions and things written on the crafts themselves, a lot of times,
symbols that people describe like hieroglyphs, right?
Like if these things are real, and we're not allowing our best scientists and researchers to put their head on the problem and figure out what's actually going on here, if we don't already know, and we're just flat out hiding everything, right? As far as, you know, the deep conspiracy goes with it all, like that we've had contact and we're continuing to be contact and we're in cahoots, or we're at least in league with whatever entity or intelligence this is. It's just it is very frustrating to get to that. Get just enough information where you're like, yeah. Just give me a little bit more, and I'll be all in. It just fails to give you that little bit more to put you all in, no questions asked.
Yeah, but the big clue is when you compare the argument of the skeptics to the argument of the people who are, you know, take the phenomenon seriously. And like the big clue is when the people who take the phenomenon seriously give you a variety of arguments that appear to reference like multiple aspects of the phenomenon. They are analyzing each aspect in detail. Like they're very thorough in their investigation.
Yeah.
On the one side for the people who are into the phenomenon, and then on the quote unquote debunker side, like it's a very cursory surface level debunking that doesn't fully address all of the arguments that are being made by the people who think the phenomena is real. When you see a balance like that where the debunking seems surface level, the debunking isn't thorough.
Yeah, but it's latched onto.
Like, it makes me feel like either A, it's just a bunch of people who are lazy debunkers, in which case, like, you haven't, I don't consider that debunked.
Right.
Or it's some sort of psyop, and
we're just willfully hiding it
it's
from
just,
the masses.
Like, I see that incongruency there on the two sides of the argument, and it's like, you, to your point, like, it's just not unbalanced enough that I can say for 100%, like, these things absolutely, I have 100% faith are real. But it is enough incongruency in the quality of those arguments that
you can imagine it to be real, and it wouldn't shatter your entire existence, right? Because you've already visualized the world being that way.
I see this phenomenon happening over and over and over and over in topics like that are so unrelated, like so many topics that we cover on this show, you know,
and they all cross at some. And there's always some cross section between a lot of these topics.
Yeah, so it's just. What if they're trying to say shit to us and we are capable of decoding it, but like we just don't because we don't give it enough attention because it's been debunked, and that seems like a tragedy.
Yeah,
anyway, you know.
At least that's the forward facing, right?
I just feel like
with it,
the debunkers need to have a higher level, a higher standard, and like if you're gonna debunk and we're gonna take like poo the whole thing, fine, but don't be lazy and debunk it fully.
Yeah.
Don't just say, "Oh, that's good enough."
Right.
And,
continue.
You know, like break down and destroy all of the arguments that they're for all of the evidence they're showing.
Yeah, if you want to make it 100% that this is not real, you got to show it all, because like a lot of that evidence showing the man-made with the authentic, quote unquote authentic, right? Quote unquote man-made, quote unquote authentic,
right?
You know, it looks clearly different, like with the braiding pattern and the spiraling aspect of it. The fact that
horizontally,
they grow horizontally, they stand
back up.
And remember, last time before this show, we talked about how they leave imprints because they grow taller on the inside of that. What's actually laid down, they grow taller and they grow different, like stronger. It leaves a ghostly imprint of the thing, even though all of them are
in
fully
the fields
back
on
up,
the next year of planting,
because those are stronger, right? They have a genetic, difference now, basically, and you can still see the crop circle. It's not the same, but you can see the outline of it. You can see what it was because the crop in that formation looks different from the rest of it.
Right. Well, because the ground has been affected. Like the
soil.
Like, there seems to be objective evidence in like the magnetic spheres they're talking about and whatnot. Like,
yeah, they call it a glazing because it's like these tiny little magnetic spheres that are attaching to.
And then the dude tried to explain it away with freaking poop from airplanes.
Well, so there was that one was funny because they had apparently seen some sort of like in association with other crop circles that weren't theirs. They were seeing this like jelly-like substance. It's also possible that whoever came up with that story was trying to debunk, like trying to do like a counter debunking of crop circles, where they were debunking them, being the hoaxers.
Yeah.
So they were like, "Oh, we keep finding this jelly-like stuff, and do you find that in the ones that you did? Is that something that you guys would leave?" And then he explained it by maybe it's this, and then also they showed him the evidence, which is probably real. The finding the iron at these sites, and then they go and spread iron around at their sites following that. None of their ones previously had iron. All the ones after that had iron.
But I bet you could investigate the differences between the iron they spread and the quote-unquote genuine.
Right, because you're not going to get a perfect magnetic sphere, microscopic magnetic spheral nodes that are showing up in the soil. Like, they're not going to be able to produce that.
Well, even if they could, even if they could produce the sample,
though.
like the scattering pattern and whatnot.
Yeah,
like
because they did say that it was linear. Remember, they didn't say it was random. They said it was linear.
Right.
So that, it gives you all the evidence you really need there. But with that specific thing, I don't know. It's a very fascinating topic. And I'm glad I was able to give you some new stuff on it and show you some cool stuff. But I want to read this book.
To the dude's book, for sure.
This is from...
What's it called?
It's called Crop Circles, Signs of Contact. This is by Colin Andrews and Stephen Spignesi.
And if anyone listening has a bunch of other books or videos or resources to link us to,
for Crop Circles would be fun.
We found the website for a group of people who makes them. Like, do you got a website for there's got to be a website for like a legitimate like MUFON style citizens effort of cataloging like legitimate circles too. So
I'm sure there is. Yeah, please let us know. I don't know what that is. We can probably find it eventually, but it'd be easier if you told us.
Yeah, I mean, I'll do a little searching because I want to include images with this episode, but Google Images can only go so far, and I can AI some crop circle images, but like this is already a visual phenomenon and there's plenty of images. I'd rather use real stuff as much as possible.
Yeah, we'll have to use the Arecibo when they compared the Arecibo message with the Arecibo answer side by side.
Yeah.
There's one in the video where we can take a snippet, but we can also do it ourselves.
Yeah,
you get both of them side by side.
That would be a cool cover for the show. That might be the cover for the show. I might arts it up a little bit too.
Sure.
But anyway.
All right, y'all. Well, this has been episode 37.
37.
Whew. All right. Well, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. That's where we let everybody know when our episodes go live. You can email us at host@dualitycheck.net. You can check out our website at dualitycheck.net, and we'll have everything posted there. All the links, all the
video
audio
links, all the images, all the anything we reference in an episode is always at dualitycheck.net/episodes. In this case /37.
And if you want to see the visual, the visual stuff as well as the audio together, we can go check us out on YouTube or Rumble. Leave a comment there, like, subscribe, and
we will see you guys on the next week, where I will probably be breaking down some of the Daniel Sheehan material, the rest of the Jesse Michaels videos, and then I think we've also probably got an episode of Secret History coming up. So be some good stuff, and maybe some more interesting things will come up in the meantime. I'm also reading Lou Elizondo's new book, and I'm interested to do some work on that too.
I'm gonna dig into this crop circle signs of contact, see if I can flesh out some more evidence that he came across.
Yeah, I'd like to dig into that more. Fun. Yeah, for sure.
All right, y'all. Talk to you later.
Adios.